Looks good. All right. So for everyone kind of tuning in to check this out, I am Nick. This is also Nick. So Nick
That's
and
right.
Nick today. Yeah. But thanks for joining me. So I'm just going to lean into it. Me and Nick actually did this once already, and I had an epic fail, and it did not record the audio. So Nick so graciously agreed to jump back on here again. And the reason we're doing it this way is because Nick just has a really like awesome story as to just getting into my program, going from some issues with pain and various things, working through the program. You've been with me for almost 12 weeks now. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to share some of that story because I think it'll be encouraging to other people. So thank you again. I appreciate you doing this. And without, wasting any more time, why don't you kind of set up a little bit of your background, where you were at kind of leading up to getting into the program?
Yeah. So, quick disclaimer before I start. You mentioned giving me the opportunity to be able to have this conversation with you, and that is the way I view this because you had to tell me to wait for a testimonial because I think I asked you like 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
When can I give a testimonial for this? Because I am not used to instant results in anything, and obviously I'm not saying healing your knee pain is an instant result, but just I was so impressed so early on into the program that I wanted to give the testimonial. So happy to be here and to do it again. Where I was at before I started the program. So I am a professional full-time musician. So I'm using my body a lot. I'm a singer, songwriter, like band leader. And I play also a ton of weddings and corporate events. So that just involves a ton of physical labor. Besides like the performance, you have the actual loading and setting up of the gear for a lot of the shows and yada, yada, yada. So I use my body a lot, but also I still identify as and will always identify as an athlete first. So I was an athlete growing up. I played football, lacrosse, basketball and everything else, but those are my two primary sports. And I also have terminal ADHD, which means I have to work out. I have to move on a daily basis. It's something that's very important to me. And it's also something that I stay on top of. And I think I have a very healthy approach to working out. Despite all of that, before I got in the program, I was experiencing tremendous knee pain. And so what happened was a few years ago, I started experiencing pain in my knees that I couldn't identify. I was like, I don't know, it feels like there's like something in there. Is this what people mean by there's fluid in there? I didn't know what it was. And so I went to a doctor. They kind of pulled me in the cattle line next, one of 100 people that day, popped me up on a table, said like, move your leg here. Okay, move your leg there. Okay, I said, Doc, what is it? And before I could get the words out, he said like, yeah, you got no cartilage. So go to this strip mall physical therapy and you'll be good to go. And I tried to ask him more questions, didn't want to give me much. So I went to this strip mall physical therapy. Just to be clear, that was not a direct quote. That just in retrospect is how I viewed it because that's what happened. But I went to this physical therapy and I actually learned a lot. This seems like it should be extremely basic, but for someone like myself who has been in athletics my entire life, for me to not know this shows me like, hey, this is something that hopefully society learns more about in terms of body health and like body mechanics. And what I learned at the physical therapy in the strip mall was that like I was having knee pain because the rest of my body wasn't strong enough. Like I didn't work out legs. I would run constantly. And I knew the saying that like running's not the same as working out legs. And this is how I found out. So they would test the strength of my hips. I didn't have any. They would test the strength of my calves. It wasn't that good. And so they gave me just sort of like knee rehab for dummies sort of exercises. And I saw a huge improvement, which showed me, oh, okay, that's what this is about. It's strengthening the rest of your muscle groups so that your knees don't take all of the pounding. And so I improve, and then plateaued tremendously for like a year, 2 years. And at that time, I started to dig into Instagram to more knee recovery. My algorithm said like, oh, you want knee recovery? That's all we're going to show you. And that's how I found your page. But I had also sort of been able to cross-reference with other people. Like, hey, I've been seeing a lot of these similar exercises over the years. People out on slant boards and walking backwards and all these things. And so that's what led me to get into your program because I felt like there was a non-experimental, but like a world of rehabbing your knees that you were part of. And I really identified with your page. There was that side of it that I wasn't getting from the strip mall. And I figured, hey, if I had the improvement here, what if I actually use these targeted exercises? And so that's how I ended up in the program.
That's great, man. And then would you just real quick share, because last time we talked, you were talking a little bit of some of the like actual struggles that you were having, specifically, like I think
Yeah.
with your job as being a musician, like, would you just kind of dive in just quickly on some of what those struggles were that, you did lay out a really nice picture here of where you were kind of at, but specifically, what were you feeling on a day in, day out basis as you were going into these gigs and things like that?
So I know I'm an outlier in terms of my like day-to-day life, being a musician and have my job work that way. But for me, I have actually probably a bunch of people could find similar examples. But because of that, I have like real precise markers for what I was feeling. So number one, I used to run 4 times a week minimum. Really couldn't run anymore without
Mm.
getting pain. And that duration of how long I could run just kept shortening and shortening. So that's a huge telltale sign. And then the other one, which I mentioned last time when we were talking, which is also this one to me is I guess they're sort of equally valuable, but this is huge. At the end of my gigs, particularly if I'm doing like corporates and weddings, which are very long days, 12 plus hours on your feet in addition to performing. And at the end of the night, you're all done. You're breaking down the stage setup. That is the end of a long day. Before I got into the program, I was in tremendous pain with my knees. It was just, they hurt, they're sort of throbbing. I have to be hyper conscious of how they're feeling. I just have tremendous pain. And even it was affecting my performances. So
Mhm.
obviously you gotta strategically perform. You're not just gonna whip your body all around like you're 12 years old or whatever. But what I was having to do was not cool. I felt like I was like, playing injured or whatever. And like I was on like a Travis Kelce minutes restriction or something like that. And
Exactly.
same caliber athlete. No. Not quite. But yeah, so that's where I was at before I joined the programs. After the end of these gigs, tremendous pain. I would say a month into the program, at least a 50% reduction in pain. I know we can go, I'm not sitting, it wasn't a magic formula. We'll go into what it took to get there. But I've
Yeah.
had that real precise barometer of after these gigs, I can barely move to now I feel very incredibly functional.
That's awesome, man. So now just transitioning from, where you were, you already kind of started to move into that, saying you about a month in, you were feeling 50% better. Give some, just idea of as you got into the program, as you started to work on some of these moves, kind of some of those markers, those time frames for you, as far as, just maybe give an overall like cover of what the experience has been like for you.
Yeah. So you helped me tremendously currently, and especially in the beginning there when I'm doing something new. Like I said, this style of strengthening your body by it sounds hysterically simple, but this is just not how any of us grew up. It was like, lift this. This is how you get your legs stronger,
Yeah.
just generally. And now it's
Yeah.
about, well, your tibia is connected, the hip bone's connected to the whatever bone, right? You got to
Yeah.
actually precisely identify all these areas to help out. So when you first get into the program, when I first got into the program, I had a list of, let's say, 7 exercises on the first day that I
Mhm.
had never done before. And
Mhm.
so you have super detailed, incredibly helpful videos that outline how to do it. And then, you know, it's like anything else. Like it's going to take you practice to learn how to do them correctly. So I'd say the first few weeks, I think I even asked you like 5 sessions in, I said like, hey, I feel like I'm slowly learning these moves better, really because I was sending my videos back to you and you were helping me critique them. But
Yep.
I also am not getting a workout right now because it's taken me so long to like, okay, wait, what's it called again? What kind of raise?
Yeah.
FLH? What kind of raise? Okay, am I doing it right? I think I did it wrong. I think I mixed it. There was just a lot of learning in the first
Yep.
week or 2 weeks, depending on how much time you have. I have the days free, so I was able to really dedicate a lot of time to it in the beginning. And I asked you
Yep.
like, hey, I'm assuming once I learn these, this will start to get faster. And you said that's exactly what the case is going to be. You gave me some expectations of how long it might take or might not take. And I would say maybe like 2 weeks in, big difference, at least for some of the workouts. Maybe there were a couple other the movement sets that you have, and maybe it was 4 weeks in where, okay, now I'm like
Yep.
flying through these. But yeah, that it was like it's a learning phase at first, and it's not rocket science, so you will learn it. There's just be aware that there might be 7 new movements. Learn them first, and then you're not going to forget them at that point. And so that was my experience of the beginning was learning, already feeling a benefit, because like if you never work out your your calves specifically,
Yeah.
you have so much easy room for growth. And so
Yeah.
that's the way I sort of looked at the program. And so that was the beginning of my journey there.
Yeah, that's
Learning and
great.
then really ramped up.
Yeah, and I think that's important for people to understand. There's always going to be a learning curve when it comes to anything, any new skill that you're acquiring, which in this case, you're acquiring the skill of learning how to make your knees healthier, which you've now even moved beyond that. Now, almost 12 weeks into the program, we've actually shifted you. I think have you been on the same program the whole time?
No, I've been on the same one. We're about to be we
Okay,
were probably going to stick with that and go to sort of level 2. So even like someone like me
that's right.
who's really dedicated and has the luxury of the time to be able to do it. And I still think I have some meat left on the bone, but we have
That's right.
transitioned weeks ago from like, okay, I'm learning to like, ooh, I'm really pushing it in all these
Yeah,
workouts.
now you're really starting to get a workout, right? Exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's good to like point out is there's gonna be a learning curve at the beginning. And there's gonna be, and I think you've done a really good job of this, and maybe you can speak to this more, but you've done a really good job of not being overly eager to push to levels that you're not ready for. You've really taken the cautious approach. You're still moving forward. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's the part we'll talk about next is what has it been like for you kind of getting the progress? Where are you now? Almost 12 weeks, finished with 12 weeks of the program, and maybe like give some markers along the way. Like, how did you feel at 4 weeks, 8 weeks, now almost 12 weeks? Like, what has that been like?
So I'll start with where I'm at now. And I have that awesome specific barometer of how do I feel after a 12-hour wedding gig? Or like if we're doing a weekend run with the band doing original music and like in van, like cramped up, then you're playing a night and you're hustling around. How do I feel at the end of those gigs? Like I don't have pain right now. Now I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, my knees are 24 again. And oh, I can just do whatever I want. Of course, I'm 33 now. I'm cautious, like the way you would want to be. Grew up watching, unfortunately, Tom Brady smashed my Steelers and stuff like that. But you still learn some things from him in terms of like, okay, this is what you have to do. Like your warm up regiment's going to be longer as you get older, yada yada.
Yeah.
So that's all part of this education. But that's how I feel like at the end of the gigs. Oh, there's no pain, and that was not the case at all. So that's where I feel now. And then sort of the benchmarks, I would say the beginning couple of weeks for the learning, and then it became like the real excitement because the benefits were so noticeable. And right now I'm in the sort of pushing phase of like, let me see like if I can do the variation that you have like variations of certain drills. We're like, okay, this is a 2-legged movement. Now let's move it to 1. And there are certain exercises where I am able to do that. There are other exercises where I'm not even able to really do the basic movement that great. And I just understand, okay, these movements for me are going to take longer. These ones for me, I can push. And so those are some of my barometers. And what I would encourage other people to think about is like, there is no deadline for this. So me not pushing it past exercises that I haven't mastered yet is easy for me because my goal is like knee health permanently. Once again, be realistic as you get older. It is what it is. But like clearly the world is changing dramatically now in terms of what thought was always of like, hey, so we're not going to pay really any real attention to our health. Your body's just going to decay and you're just going to be fat and in pain permanently. And then you look at that, you're like, well, what did you do? Like, well, I just drank and ate and it's like benched.
Yeah.
So like there's a whole new subsect of like, you can work on this stuff and be in pretty damn good shape for 50s, 60s, like a shocking amount of time. So that's my mentality with myself. And so it trickles into the program with me not pushing too hard to move. Like I'm trying to master the move. And you're great about keeping me on track with that. It's like, hey, you're supposed to hold the rep at the top. It's like, oh, well, that's why you're getting the benefit. It's not, I'm not racing. So.
Yeah, that's great, man. And then just because we're short on time, and I'll let you wrap this up with this kind of piece is for anybody there's a lot of people who are maybe hesitant is the right word to step into like an online coaching training platform because they're just like, man, I don't know, like you're just going to give me a program, how are we going to communicate, how are you going to like make sure I'm doing things properly? Could you just speak to that person who might be watching this going, I don't really know if I'm into the online training thing? What has that experience been like for you? What would you say to somebody on the fence?
So I think we mentioned this last time when we talked, because so this is now the second time of us actually talking like face to face versus on the app all the time. But we said this last time. It's funny because we already felt like we knew each other really well. And I would say same feeling goes for today. And
Yep.
the reason for that is, and I mentioned this on the last call, is I'm not doing this call just to gas you up. Like partially, I'm happy that that's a byproduct of it, but
Sure.
I don't just believe in what you're doing. I factually know that it helps. And
Yep.
the reason is, and the reason why we know each other well is because the level of detail you provide, first off, in your outlining from the videos where you outline it, you're just a good teacher and you take the right angles, you say the right amount of instructions. So the man's a gifted communicator. Let's just say that.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
there's no rambling. Like every sentence is like, clearly you worked hard on these videos. So we're not sitting here like losing any attention. You tell us, here's what you need to be focused on. Here's the exception. Here's what you do if this happens. Go do it. And then my suggestion to everybody who does the program, remember, you're not in a race. This is for long-term health, is film your workouts. Because the way I've felt about this program since day one, and we have a good relationship that I'm looking forward to continuing and hopefully taking a really long distance and just conquering fitness, as it were. But the way I felt about this program, and I'm circling this back to the online, is like, I feel like I got in before you blew up too big, because the amount of care that you put into the feedback is extreme. And so I am good about filming all of my movements, which is my huge suggestion to everybody. Like, film it. Even if you think you don't want to film your movements, remember what I was talking about in the early days of the workouts when you're still learning. Not only are you learning, I forgot to mention this, you're also like setting up the camera and filming. And so it's just like a long process. But I knew at that time, I'm like, this will be worth it, because like I know how to do a push-up. So these are just new versions of push-ups. I don't need to show him my push-ups. So eventually I won't need to show him my calf raise or whatever it happens to be. And so when I'll send you those videos, you know, your feedback, you send it back it's like a text messaging inside of the platform, paragraphs, like extremely detailed. Again, not rambling, because I'm not coherent. So I'm sending a lot of paragraphs and feedback, and hyper specific, super timely. It's always within, like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's like within 24 hours in my experience is what it's been. And so, and then even a couple times we've had to go really deep on a movement where you've shot me a quick, like, okay, here's what you're going through, Nick. Like, you'll use my name in the video. So that's when I feel like, oh, he is really paying attention to me. And so to me, there is no difference between the in-person and online except for time. Like, okay, if we were in the same gym, you wouldn't that I would watch the next day. You would just show me in real time. But again, time's not a factor for me in this recovery. This is a long-term process. So the care you take, the instructions you set, then the care you take afterwards, it's basically like whatever the client wants to make out of it, you're willing to give them until you blow up too big and no one's going to get in the program.
Well, hopefully, I mean, I guess it's like, I hope I do continue to blow up, because I love what I do. But at the same time, I appreciate you saying that, man. It's a big part of why I do what I do, because I do love to teach and I do love to help guide people. And so I'm a huge testament to you. I believe the reason you've gotten such great results from this in 12 weeks already is because you've been very intentional. You've sent the videos, you've applied the feedback, you've done everything I've asked you to do. So that makes a huge difference. It's not magic, right? Like, I can give you the program, but if you don't follow it well and don't communicate, then you're not going to get the same results. So kudos to you, because you've done an incredible job with that. But without taking up any more of your time, man, seriously, I really appreciate you. Thank you for hopping back on here and doing this again, because I think, again, like I said the first time, your story's powerful. I think there's a lot of people who are going to resonate with that, and it's going to answer a lot of questions for people too. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to continuing to move you forward, man. We're going to keep rocking.
I do want to add one last thing. Be remiss not to mention this before I leave. You know, I've talked about myself being super dedicated and, you know, a very motivated athlete. Now, if you're doing the program, like, be dedicated in terms of sending the videos and taking what you are giving to the clients. Like, people need to take advantage of that, because you will give back as much as they give. So that's awesome. But I do not think at all that you have to be at sort of my level of hyper dedication to this. Now, I don't mean to like screw off and not care about it. Like, we're trying to draw the line there, but I wouldn't want to intimidate anyone who's like, God, this guy says he's really all about it, just A+ student in this every single day. Not everybody might have the luxury to do that time-wise. Other people also may not have like the motivation. Like, that's totally fine. I get that. Like, some of us have this freaky workout gene where like we need it. you do not need to fall into that category if you go back to the other point I keep making, which is like, you are not in a rush. Like because you don't do specialized hip movements and specialized ankle movements, you have so much room for growth. So like, I would say that you can also just bite off what you can chew and what's manageable for you. And as long as you're getting an A+ in terms of like communication and consistency, like don't be taking breaks. You don't have to be some freakishly dedicated person to get the results out of this.
Yeah.
It'll go slower than me. It'll just go a little bit slower, but it'll happen. And what are you in a hurry for? So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point, man. Well, thank you, Nick. Again, appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to do this with me, man. And I'm sure we'll do it again at some point because we're going to keep you rolling. So we got to get updates down the road too. So we'll definitely do this again, man.
Awesome. Nick's out. Pleasure.
That's right. Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Later, man. Thanks.